So picture the guy behind the counter showing you these two AR15 barrels that look almost identical. One of them spits the bullet out 100 feet per second faster. He just shrugs and says, "Oh, just a few inches difference, you won't even notice." You almost believe him, then you actually run both, and you find out he's wrong. The worst time to find out your barrel is too short is when you send some rounds down range and the gun chokes. So every debate about what a good barrel length is should come down to this one relationship: velocity per inch versus when each inch stops paying off, and what you actually use the gun for. A longer barrel means higher velocity, and when it gets shorter, things change. Every inch of the barrel when shooting .556 gives you roughly 25 to 50 feet per second of velocity. But most people gloss over the fact that gain doesn't stay constant. It actually shrinks as the barrel gets longer. So going from a 14.5 to a 16.5 inch barrel nets you somewhere around 50 to 75 FPS. But going from a 20 to a 22 inch, you're looking at maybe 25 to 40 FPS for those same 2 inches. So the barrel length is measured from the closed bolt face to the end of the muzzle crown with a precision gauge. And not every marketed barrel length is exact. When roughly 55,000 pounds per square inch of pressure pushes the base of the bullet down the barrel, the expanding gas keeps accelerating it faster and faster until it leaves the barrel. The gas pressure behind the bullet actually drops off as the bullet travels further down the bore. So those last few inches are working against a much weaker push than the first few inches were. That diminishing return is why nobody is building a 24-inch .556 rifle, because you gain almost nothing in velocity, but a super long-looking musket, which the physics just stops paying dividends at a certain point. Once you understand this curve, every length on the market makes immediate sense. But each one has its pros and cons. One more thing the barrel does besides set velocity is that it spins the bullet using these grooves. Twist rate is how fast that spin. A 1 in 7 means the bullet makes one full turn every 7 inches down the bore. And then you have 1 in 9, 1 in 12, and so on. And they all perform differently if the bullet weight changes. Tighter twist means faster spin, which heavier bullets benefit from to stay stable. For your normal 55 to 77 grain bullets, a 1 in 7 just works based on this chart, which is why almost every AR barrel ships with it. You stop thinking about it once you know this. So, let's start at the short barrels. The 10.3 and 11.5 builds are for super tight spaces for cops, and mostly military applications like these scenarios. Think of the Mark 18 as an example. Those generally generate around roughly up to 2600 FPS, and it's also very close to the threshold where .556 fragmentation becomes unreliable. And when you extend that range, it dips below it pretty fast. The worst time to find out your barrel is too short is when you pull the trigger and the gun chokes. Imagine you're clearing a room. You squeeze off 2 rounds and the third one jams because the gas system never got the pressure it needed. That's the problem the military ran into with the Mark 18 after they cut down an M4 to just 10.3 inches. And that slashed the dwell time. So they had to do all these changes until it worked decently, like the port size and bolt parts upgrade and everything else. And that's what a short barrel actually costs you on the reliability side. The action runs harder, hotter, and with less margin for error, and you have to engineer around all of it. You're balancing a trifecta: bullet velocity, gas pressure, and reliability. The gas system on these short builds is almost always carbine length, because there isn't enough barrel real estate for anything longer. In most cases, it will run better than the 10.5, assuming it's a well-maintained gun. So if you run identical ammo through them, the 11.5 will spit the bullet out about 100 feet per second faster, almost every single time, and also tighter groups. Now here's the trick to make a 10.3 perform like an 11.5, which is to use rounds that crank the pressure way up. So that extra pressure can do the trick, and suddenly the short barrel is nearly matching what a standard load does out of the 11.5 to buy back a lot of that lost speed, if you're willing to feed it the hotter stuff. So the counter guy was half right. Yes, the barrels do look the same, but once you understand dwell time, you stop seeing two near identical barrels. Carbon gas on a short barrel just means snappier recoil impulse, and it has a tighter reliability margin compared to everything that runs longer. So, for example, the 14.5 is what the M4 has, because the US military settled it on as the balance point between the M193's ballistics and its muzzle velocity. It's lethal enough at practical combat distances, and the gun is also short enough for troops to carry in most use cases. The gas system is carbine length. Navy's own testing later confirmed that switching to a mid-length gas system cut down the failure rates roughly in half, over 30,000 rounds compared to the same barrel length with carbine length gas. And that is one reason why the URGI went with the mid-length gas system. But here's the thing that surprises AR-15 newbies. A 14.5 or anything shorter is considered somehow to be more dangerous according to general public opinions. And it's governed by the National Firearms Act in the United States. So the logic goes like this. You can have all these, but you can't have these until you pay a fee, $200 tax stamp, even though the bullet comes out the same way, even though the shorter one is less powerful in most cases. So the silly legal go-around is to pin and weld a muzzle device so that it hits the physical 16-inch federal legal minimum. That extra 1.5 inches of muzzle device does absolutely nothing to the performance, unless it's a dissipator type of device, like basically is there to increase the back pressure on shorter guns, like the older AR15. It's to make it cycle better with shorter dwell time. The velocity numbers between the two are functionally identical, because when someone tells you the 14.5 is ballistically superior to a 16-inch, they're talking about a fraction of performance that doesn't even matter for anything within 50 yards in the context of civilian self-defense scenarios. Velocity out of a 16-inch barrel in 5.56 runs 2,900 to 3,000 feet per second with M193. Almost every aftermarket handguard, gas block, and optic mount on the market is sized and designed around the 16-inch platform. If you're building an AR for casual range use, this is where you start. The gas science on a 16-inch is where this length gets a real practical advantage over the shorter builds. A 16-inch barrel basically accepts all these gas systems. And yes, every permutation of the setup will have a slightly different feel, like different ammo, what muzzle you put on it, the buffer, and even the BCG. The weight of it can affect it just so slightly. The mid-length moves the gas port further away from the chamber, from here out, and it taps gas at lower pressure. And in a way, then it spreads the bolt carrier's rearward impulse over more time. And if you compare these two here on the screen, the mid-length one generally has a softer kick, slower action cycle, less wear on the bolt carrier group and the buffer system. Now, here's the thing that throws people off if you dig into the technical. So the jump from 16 to 18 inches, you're picking up maybe 50 to 100 more FPS. And now, you're roughly around 3,000 FPS with just some standard 5.56. That gain is there, but it's sitting on the shallow section of those diminishing returns curve, which begs the obvious question, then why does 18 inches even an option? So 18 inches is about what that additional barrel length does for consistency. Think of harmonics of the barrel when it's a free float setup, doing some precision shooting. For example, like the Mark 12 special purpose rifle that many people like to clone. The way this type of gun came around wasn't to replace dedicated bolt-action sniper rifle. In fact, a bolt gun will always be more accurate than a semi-auto. Of course, depending on who is doing the shooting. The goal for military use cases was to give a trained shooter enough reach to hit something at 600 meters with match-grade 77 grain bullet, while still operating alongside a standard rifle squad. The rifle-length gas system that pairs with an 18-inch barrel runs the smoothest of any setup in the AR-15 platform that you see here. The gas port sits further from the chamber. The port pressure is lower, and the bolt carrier moves back more gradually with less violence than a carbine-length gas or even a mid-length one. Long story short, the 18-inch is a precision-leaning choice with softer recoil, but don't expect a dramatic velocity advantage over your 16-inch gun, because that's not the point of it. The 20-inch barrel is where the AR-15 platform started, and the M16 that we all know had that 20-inch. A M193 round out of that barrel runs around 3,200 feet per second, basically a faster bullet that can deliver effective terminal performance well past 300 meters and even into 500-yard territory. And the longer rifle-length gas system always get underestimated by people who have never shot one. And that is when it gets paired up with a rifle-length buffer, and if these boxes are checked, which then means the felt recoil is significantly lower than anything else here. The longer gas dwell time, the benefits of a heavier barrel, and the longer buffer system all works together. Imagine what a 22 feels like. Now picture that on a centerfire rifle. But the trade-off is obvious. A 20-inch is a pain in the butt in a vehicle, bumping into things, and it's just not great for doing raids inside buildings. The military's 14.5 decision was during a time post-Vietnam era that most engagement happened at these distances. For the civilians, the 20-inch is for anyone doing hunting and precision shooting. It's the best choice there is to get the most out of the 5.56. So every barrel length pairs with a specific gas system that is proven to do well based on years of data, and mismatching them causes real problems. Short barrels under 10 typically run pistol-length gas tubes. Between the 14.5 and 16-inch range, the carbon or mid-length are the most common. Precision barrels between 18 and 20 inches run mid or rifle-length system. If the gas port is too close to the muzzle, then the gun is undergassed, it runs sluggish, and starts short stroking. If the port is too close to the chamber, then it tends to overgas. So the rule of thumb is, if you see the shell ejection pattern a bit forward like this, then there is a high chance that it's overgassed, because the bolt comes back too fast, and the shell is bouncing off the case deflector too hard. Without the case deflector, like on the earlier M16s, then you probably can't tell. Shorter barrels have limited real estate, so they run higher pressure gas with tighter margins. Now here's the one that generates the most incorrect arguments online. Shorter barrels are not inherently less accurate in terms of medium range engagements. Oh, in fact, they will still do significant damage to the human body. Just imagine having a metal piece stuck in you in a fight, regardless how big or small. It's gonna hurt, okay? A short barrel from a quality manufacturer with a properly cut crown will outshoot a mediocre long barrel every time. What determines accuracy is the quality of the barrel steel. Think of how precise they can make it, for example, the chamber and rifling, the ammunition quality, and of course, who is shooting it. A good short barrel built to tight tolerances will print tighter groups at 50 yards than a cheap 20-inch barrel with a bad chamber. So what shorter barrels actually do is reduce bullet velocity, and then the bullet loses energy faster downrange. Fragmentation also becomes unreliable at longer distances, and this is way before we even considered adding wind components to the equation. It becomes harder to manage. So a 10.5-inch barrel is not less accurate at 50 yards versus it's less effective at 400 yards. Those are not the same statement, and conflating them is where most of the barrel length debate goes off the rails. Get that distinction clear and you stop arguing past people who are actually saying something different than you think they are. So, to make this extremely simple, if you don't do any of these, like you're not using a suppressor, you're not doing work that demands a short gun, The 16-inch with the mid-length gas system is where the math lands for most people. If you run a suppressor, or you train in spaces where overall gun length actually matters, you're in the 10.3 to 11.5 inch lane. If you want the handling feel of the military M4 without the NFA paperwork, the pinned and welded 14.5 can get you there. If you're shooting precision at distance, the 18-inch rifle length setup is genuinely one of the best shooting. The 20-inch gets you maximum 5.56 performance and puts you back at the original design intent of the platform.